All right, well, what about this shift in the Western worldview? Well, the Western worldview has been shifting towards a more open posture towards other worldviews. Although we need not uncritically embrace all worldview shifts as beneficial, hopefully we've gotten that by now, but I think we'll probably need to learn a little bit more about that in the future. We often cannot accommodate new knowledge without being willing to consider stretching or replacing traditional paradigms.
Yeah, right. This is something that Thomas Kuhn, philosopher of science, right, dealt with. That sometimes we're stuck in a particular paradigm we can't get out, right? And so it has to be replaced with another one. And oftentimes the old fogies who are stuck in it never get out of it. And it's the younger people that have to replace it and move on from it, right?
Yeah. But sometimes it's those old fogies that instill in it their predecessor, their successor, and that successor comes back and says, hey, you were right the whole time. And that upends the whole thing. And I don't appreciate that.
So, all right. So this shift among scholars, and he says resistance or not, a shift in worldview has been occurring, he tells us, right? So notice now he's going to talk more about this view with regard to miracles. And he's suggesting here that there's been a shift, right? In Hume's day, it was, let's condemn them. They don't exist.
Let's throw them in insane asylums.
Let's define them away, that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
He says, so, a shift in worldview has been occurring, and Boltzmann's once already assumption that no one in the modern world believes in miracles is even more demonstrably false today than when he claimed it, right? He says, obviously no one in the modern world believes in miracles. That's what he claimed, right? He said, so Keener tells us that likewise that he noted in the last chapter and in this one, the particular arguments once used by, for instance, Spinoza, Hume, and others to form the modern consensus against miracles made sense only on the philosophic and scientific presuppositions of their era, right? Not those of our era. So, and that's what he's going to pursue here in this particular section.
Right. One of the worst things that ever happened to atheism is ideas of the Big Bang, because you don't have a solid state universe. It wasn't existing and always existing. There was a start. Oh man, if there was a start, maybe there was a starter to it, and then you have to divide by your negative I and get a round perspective. But then when you put in the real numbers, well, then it gets to a point. Oh man, we're back to a point again. We understand things about, well, we'll just throw in the multiverse, and we don't have any evidence to that, but it just really helps us out with our math to make this the only world where evolution, the numbers work, because if we posit infinity worlds, then this is at least the one that did work.
At least get to one, yeah.
Good, we're there.
Yeah. What's the evidence? Well, do we observe them? No, yeah. But they have to be there for our assumptions.
This is me grabbing at my straws. I'm getting there. Just give me enough of them. Well, more scholars today acknowledge that the long-standing academic assumptions that only atheistic or deistic approaches can be objective, i.e. epistemologically neutral, presupposes that atheism or deism is self-evidently true. It does not prove their truth, and it's certainly not neutral. New Testament scholars have become increasingly less comfortable with such unproven postulates of the Enlightenment era, and that's very true. You have both scientists, you have both from looking at biology to even computer science, you have philosophers, you have New Testament scholars, which you would think almost would represent the crazy Christian fundamentalists. They weren't always the case, but now we're starting to be a little bit more crazy and Christian and fundamentalist again. So, let's make Christianity Christian again.
And he gives us, by the way, an example of a historical Jesus scholar, Marcus Borg, who rightly points out, he tells us, the primary intellectual objection to supernatural activity flows from a rigid application of the modern worldview's definition of reality. Yet the modern view is not one of a large number of the modern view is but one of a large number of humanity's constructed maps of reality. It is historically the most recent, obviously,
right.
And it's impressive because of the degree of control that it gives us, but is no more an absolute map of reality than any of the previous maps. All, he says, are relative, products of particular histories and culture, and the modern one, like its predecessors, notice, will be superseded, because that's always happened in every era, right? And so, yes, we have a good one. Yes, it seems to work, but so did other folks in other historical epochs. and ours will be superseded. He's arguing just like the rest of them. So we can't say we have finally arrived in the way we view things is the be all and end all. Right.
Exactly. It happened with science. It happened with philosophy. It happened with morality. So let's just assume we're all wrong. Except, what seems weird is once you apply Christian principles to life in ways that the Christian worldview operates, it seems like you have things like the perpetuation of children to supplant their parents at an increasing rate. You have a more moral system. You have a more giving system. You're less likely to have things like slavery and various other societal ills. And it's not always perfect, but it does seem pretty interesting that the one thing to come 2,000 years ago that said, if you apply this type of system with this belief structure, you actually get positive benefits from it that correspond to flourishing in reality. That seems to kind of be happening, and it's only now that we're almost forced to recognize ourselves as having that truth as well. So, but let the modern worldview turn us under, and let's embrace the cross.
And every review of reality in every historical era thought their view was correct, right? I mean, on pain of illogic, if you're living 2,000 years ago, the Earth had to be the center of our solar system. I mean, just look up in the sky. The sun is going
99% of scientists believe it. 99% of them.
So it has to be the case. What are you, you'd have to be crazy not to believe that.
Right.
Well, guess what? We don't believe that.
for a modern audience, yes.
And so it was superseded by a different view. Now, again, we're not saying that there were things that were not right in that view, and we're not saying that there are things that are not right in our modern view. The point he's trying to make is, we don't make our view it, period, and assume all of our presuppositions have to be correct because we're in the modern view. Right. Use the modern view.
Exactly. All right. Well, do modern people believe in miracles? Are the populace themselves, are they so corrupt as to believe magic sky daddies, to raining answers to prayers down from the sky and turning water to wine yet again? Well, in considering the shift in the Western worldview, we should not take into account only those who are experts in narrowly defined fields of knowledge. It's good, it's understandable from an academic standpoint, but that's not how most people operate. Not all of them are equally relevant to the matter at hand. Consensus does not determine truth, and many statements of consensus are premature in any case. And let me just point to you to the last 5 years in the filming of this episode, at least the last 5 years. I go back further, but I don't think we have the memory for that. So that's the case.
Right. And so the question he's pursuing here is, the claim is, well, the modern worldview doesn't believe in miracles. That's what a Human Company and further got. Well, okay, let's look at what modern people, that would be folks like us, right? Or people that live in our time. Let's take a look at what they believe. Do they not believe in miracles? And so this is what he finds. He says the observation that belief in miracles persists, indeed flourishes in the modern world, is even more obvious today than it could have been in Boltman's era when he said the modern people don't believe in miracles, right? John Mayer points out that a 1989 Gallup poll showed that 82% of the people in the United States believed in miracles today, with only 6% categorically rejecting that view. All right. And then he says a more recent Pew Forum survey concludes that 79% affirm that miracles still occur today as in ancient time. Today, by the way, this is modern, right? More surprisingly, he tells us 34% of Americans claim to have witnessed or experienced divine healing. And so what is he getting at here? Well, he says one might disagree with all of these claims, but one could not simply arbitrarily exclude all the claimants from the modern worldview. They're living in the modern worldview, and yet they're holding to miracles. So you can't say that in the modern worldview, nobody believes in miracles. That's just false on the face of it.
So the scientists just haven't done their job of getting it into the masses. So just do better. Just do better. Well, by defining modernity ethnocentrically in terms of mid-20th century academic Western elite, Bultmann was simply restating his own philosophic presuppositions, many of which, such as those reflecting the influence of Heidegger, are no longer fashionable in the academy. Oh, so it was like he was right at the time, but now it's faux pas and you should throw out his ideas because he was wrong. Indeed, no less scholar than Karl Barth criticized Bultmann, and again, if you're agreeing with Barth, be on a hesitant side, but he criticized Barth for uncritically rejecting some 19th century miracle accounts. As another scholar complains, Bultmann and others excluded miracles without considering any of the strong concrete evidence for miracles. Yet, if the hallmark of empirical science is impartial openness to evidence, such a way of proceeding can hardly be called scientific. So if you just say it doesn't accord to my worldview, I know miracles don't happen because they're a violation of nature or whatever bad definition you want to give it. I won't look at it. No, thank you. You're crazy. Off the chart. You're not doing science. You're doing politics.
Right. Or worse, right?
Right.
If there's anything. Anyway, we won't go there.